Alrighty, to our automotive friends and neighbors and enthusiasts from all around the world, we're still not sure why you throw away hours carelessly listening to this. This
alacritous episode of V8 Radio, Kevin.
Alacritous.
Yes, sir.
Well, certainly lacking. What does alacritous mean?
A cheerful willingness or eagerness.
Oh, yeah, that works.
Alacritous.
Yeah, right on. Cool. Well, I'm your host, Kevin Ostie, joined as always by our esteemed co-host, Mr. Mike Huball Clark, and you're listening to an alacritous episode of V8 Radio. This is a podcast where we sometimes talk about car stuff and a lot of times talk about nonsense. But the meat and potatoes of this particular program, for those who subscribe to our podcast, which we encourage everybody to do, is a section that we like to call automotive trivia.
Good stuff, Kev.
Because this is automotive trivia, and you can't call it too much else.
I know, right? Good times.
It's like that lyric in the Monkees tune, Valerie, where
I love her.
Yeah, I love her, Valerie.
I love her, Valerie.
They call her Valerie. Probably because it's the only thing she responds to.
Exactly.
Because it's her name.
And this is automotive trivia.
How about that? So have you come up with a? You know what? Before we get into the current trivia question,
sure.
we have a rehash from last time.
Oh,
yeah. So my trivia question to you was, what part of a car is dimensioned in both SAE standard and metric dimensions?
right.
And of course, you said the tire, which is what I was going for. But of course, Trevor,
God dang it.
in our V8 Speed and Resto shop,
Say no more.
yes, Trevor pointed out that there is another part of the car that's in everything that is dimensioned both with metric and SAE.
Really?
And that's not my trivia question this week, but it could be.
So you're not gonna give it up.
I'll give it up. But he pointed out that the spark plug is also metric.
Really?
Because many times they have metric threads, but the nut size is always SAE.
Oh. Well, that's interesting.
So there's another one.
Would that? I wonder if that would. Now that it has me thinking. So
Well,
even on.
I think like on American domestic stuff, then it would both be SAE.
Oh, okay. But in import, it would probably be metric and SAE.
Or, like a modern domestic or
Right.
metric thread. Yeah. So that was kind of fun.
All right. Well, thank you, Trevor, for the clarification.
Yeah, he's always good for clarifications.
He is.
Mm-hmm. So with that bit of excitement, I've got one more little piece of fun on the trivia question side, and this is great. This is so cool. You and I had joked about before that we don't have a running score for who's ahead on the trivia questions between yourself or myself. And because we are still in social distancing, self-quarantine, lockdown times here in the world, our friend Yardley, who we've mentioned before, who owns a 69 Riviera, Yards went back and took the time to listen to all of our trivia questions and actually created a spreadsheet and sent it to me, tallying who's ahead. And it was funny because he sent me an email and it said, "Welp, last week, Mike asked somebody to do a spreadsheet outlining the win-loss ratio of your trivia questions. So because I'm done painting the master bathroom, scrubbing the master bedroom top to bottom, scrubbing the living room top to bottom, scrubbing the kitchen top to bottom, which needs to be done again, scrubbing the family room, including shampooing the carpet, cleaning and organizing my workshop and garage, and cataloging every spare part in a spreadsheet, over 250 parts, and tossing almost 20 contractor trash bags of crap out the door, and finishing the last bucket list of jobs on my Riviera, and it's too cold to weed the garden." I reviewed every single podcast and kept a tally of winners and losers. So it's a little interesting insight as to what some car guy friends are doing to maintain their sanity.
My
Which
gosh.
this task would drive me insane.
No
All
doubt.
on its own. But he ordered these by date, starting in February of 17, and here we are, 62 shows later, and we're about a 2-to-1 ratio.
About a 2-to-1 ratio. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you've got 15 correct answers, and I have 32 at this
Which
point.
still blows me away on both sides.
What do you mean?
I thought you would have way more correct answers, and I would have way less correct answers.
No. I'm telling you, you hang with this for sure.
Well, I mean, the analytics are in there, so I guess I have to agree with it. But,
Some of these I have to ask about because like there was a bonus question, so like in the March 13th, 2020 episode, I was correct, incorrect, and you were incorrect, incorrect.
Yeah, it must have been a two-parter.
Yeah, I don't know which one of those counts towards the total, or if they both did, or whatever. But
Yardley, we need
yeah,
we need you to
we need to
expand.
Too funny.
That's
So
great stuff. Thank you again, Yardley. That was unbelievable
yeah,
that
yeah,
you actually took the time to do that. It was fantastic.
totally above and beyond regular listener duties.
Yes, exactly. All we want people to do is listen. And this guy actually took it a step beyond and actually did stuff.
Yeah. So that's fun. Okay, so where were we? Oh yeah, right. Trivia question.
Trivia questions. Oh, man.
So, you got one?
Yes, sir. I do have one. Kevin, you and the talented crew at the V8 Speed and Resto Shop have certainly done your fair share in putting out a few pro touring cars in your day. But, Kevin, I ask you, who is the man credited for starting the pro touring movement?
Well, that is a great question. So, are we talking about the term pro touring or the style of car?
The style of car.
Well, all right. So we should probably expand upon a little bit the concept of pro touring and where I believe the term even has significance. And it really kind of goes back a little ways. And it's funny because like the more society seems to advance, the more it seems to regress. Facebook, for example, we see all these different Facebook groups. And I would think by now, if you were in a group called Pro Touring Camaros or Pro Touring Builds or Pro Touring Cars on Facebook, you'd at least think you would know what the term means.
Yeah, you would think.
No, you would think, yeah. But there are plenty of people who put a picture of a 69 Camaro up there and it's got tubs and it's got wrinkle wall slicks in the back. And it's
that
on
sounds more pro street than
15
pro
by 4 front runners in front. And they're like, oh, here's my pro touring Camaro. And somebody steps up and says, well, you know, the definition of a pro touring car isn't necessarily a drag racer or a pro street car. And then they yell at me saying that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Of course you don't.
Right. Which is, you know,
I mean, how dare you even offer an opinion?
50% of the time, I'm right, I guess. Or 150% of the time, depending on how you look at the scores of our trivia questions.
Pretty much.
So, you know, it's always been my understanding that a pro touring car is an evolution of the touring car or grand touring car or GT car concept that we saw in a lot of European sport sedans. So your BMW 5 Series, your you know, some of the Mercedes 2-doors, and then taking this road-going suspension and putting it on a classic American muscle car becomes a pro touring muscle car. So bigger brakes, tauter suspension, the ability to go around turns, the ability to stop faster, and then, of course, more power goes along with that. And to expand that definition, a lot of people throw in some luxury amenities because that's what those BMWs, Mercedes, Porsches have. Those are mostly leather seat, comfortable cars. Not necessarily, though. There are those who think the fringe of Pro Touring should go the other way a little bit more, which is a track car with, no creature comforts, but just all performance. So when we started to see these cars, I think we saw a few cars that were being built that all of a sudden that label kind of applied to, and then other people started building to the label.
Okay.
So it's my opinion that, we saw some of these types of cars in the late 70s, early 80s being built by guys like Dick Goldstrand and Dennis Meacham with the Macho TAs and some of these cars. You could really take it as far back as Carroll Shelby and look at a GT350 Mustang, because a GT350 on the street was a car with increased braking and handling, and
True.
It was a road course car. But that was 2.5 decades before the Pro Touring term was even thought about. So in recent times, I'm aware of a conversation that was had between Jeff Smith, who at the time I think was either at Hot Rod or Chevy High Performance magazine, and our friend Mark Stilo at General Motors.
Mm-hmm.
And Stilo was building a Camaro, the first of, he's up to 13 or so, or 14 of them now, that was designed to embody this type of personality. And him and Jeff came up with the Pro Touring term. And in fact, I have one of the original window cling stickers of the Pro Touring logo.
Ooh, nice.
Yes. And it's it says Pro Touring. It's got kind of wings off to the side with a low profile tire with a spoked performance wheel in the middle, and that was the logo. There was an official logo of Pro Touring.
Cool.
At one point. And then, of course, our friend Larry Callahan jumped off and started ProTouring.com, and that kind of grew that side of it. And Scott Gulbranson started LateralG.net, and here you've got a couple of strong websites and forums about these types of cars.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, there was a decent amount of cars that were built around that premise, but I think the one that kind of stuck the term Pro Touring, I'm going to say, would be something by Mark Stilo. So that's my guess.
Mark Stilo. All right. Kevin says Mark Stilo. Duly noted, sir.
Duly noted.
Duly noted. All right. So
well, that was a fun reach back into a part of my mind I haven't been in a while. So
well, good. I'm happy to help.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Help me go out of my mind.
That's right.
All right, I got one for you. What? I guess this could be a two-parter. This could be a what and when.
Okay.
But we'll say the what, meaning a manufacturer, is the meat, and the when will be the potatoes.
Okay.
What was the first production supercharged car?
Ooh.
And when for the potatoes?
First production supercharged car.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. And when? Well, okay. Well, let's see. Supercharging kind of the U.S. experimented with supercharging in fighter aircraft in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And after the return of the troops after the war is when your hot rodding movement really took off. And I'm sure that it was around that time when manufacturers got on board with something like that. But I'm going to go back even further.
Oh.
And I'm going to say, because there were some luxury cars that had some really wild equipment on there.
Okay, let me get Sherman here to set the Wayback Machine.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
We're going.
Let's see. I'm going to say the first manufacturer to have a production supercharger was a Duesenberg.
A Duesenberg.
Yes.
Well, that would have been a doozy.
It would have been definitely a doozy. And I'm going to say 1930.
1930 Duesenberg. After WW2 and all that stuff.
All that nonsense, yeah.
Okay, man. Well triangulated answer.
Yeah, well, I try.
And duly noted.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. We were just talking a minute ago about ProTouring.com, and we have last episode we were chatting about magazines and how, you know, they've evolved in whatever way they have. The other thing that I find myself really missing is the automotive forums a lot.
Yeah.
Just talking about ProTouring.com and Lateral G. But I got a ray of hope this past week.
Did you?
Which was pretty interesting. Yeah. I'm on a mailing list of some sort from a couple different forums. And today that usually honestly appears to me as junk mail, where it's like, here's the latest from, you know, whatever.
Right.
But this time, for whatever reason, I decided to click on it. And it was a message from Chevelles.com.
Okay.
That forum is on fire.
Really?
Yes. It was, there had to have been 150 posts like that day.
Holy cow.
Yeah, new topics and lots of people, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. And I started kind of clicking through, and one little piece of trivia on the Chevelles.com forum is there's 3 Chevelles in the header image when you go to that website, and one of them is one that we built. How about that?
Get out of town. Right on.
Yeah. My cousin Donnie's blue 65 Chevelle is it's the lead car in the header image at Chevelles.com.
Well, that's terrific.
And it's kind of funny because they flipped it. The image is backwards from the original.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and they did that a long time ago when they redesigned that forum. And one day I went there and I was like, holy cats, look at that. And rather than be a jerk about it, I made a post saying, hey, thanks, you know, and we appreciate you sharing the car. And here's the original image if you want to see what it looks like. And a lot of people have commented that, you know, that it was kind of nice that we didn't go guns a-blazing saying, hey, you owe me money for that, or, you know, you violated my rights, because as far as I'm concerned, the more people that can see that cool car, the better.
Yeah.
So
agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. But it also appears that the Performance Years Pontiac forum is going real strong.
Yeah, I've never seen that forum wither at all, even through the advent of Facebook and the rise of social media. I go there fairly regularly, and there's tons of new posts there. It's a juggernaut of activity there still, which is great.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of them took a hit and went to Facebook and other stuff. And the problem with that is that, you know, the platform on Facebook is not designed to be a storehouse of knowledge. It's a scrolling feed of nonsense.
Good point. Yep.
So it was really good to see that resource is still viable. One thing that was not really cool was I went back and checked some of our old posts of some of the forum threads on the cars that we built that we shared on Chevelles.com. And some of them, all the pictures are gone.
Really?
Yeah. And I know why. It's a technicality on our site. There's a section of where the images are stored that is not HTTPS secured.
Oh.
It's regular HTTP. And that forum, their new policy is they will not show
unsecure images.
Yes.
Okay. That's too bad. I mean, I get it. It's too bad that your pictures don't get to be shown, but I understand the security involved.
Well, it forces my hand to make an upgrade on the website and get everything secured properly again, and that means another project.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. But I've
Some
been
guys
told
have all the luck.
Yeah, I've been told that they will come back magically as soon as we do that. So,
oh, that's good. I mean,
so
is it that big a deal to secure the site?
Yes.
Oh boy. Whoops.
In a nutshell. Well, it can be.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's not. The one way to look at this is that every single URL in your server has to be secured. So either they all have to change, which is everything changing, or they might live inside a folder, and if the whole folder gets the security privilege,
Okay.
it'll recursively bump everything inside of it.
That would be easier.
That I'm hoping that's what's going to happen.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And that's really the main reason why I haven't done this already, is because I didn't want all of our links to be broken all over the internet.
Right.
Because the address changed. So
yeah, that would stink. It's got to be a better way, though. There's got to be a way to do it without breaking everything. I'm sure there is.
I'd like to think of, most things in life, there's a way to do things without breaking everything, but I've not yet discovered that.
Oh, I know how to break it. All right.
Oh, yeah. I continually find things to break.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was cool. I was glad to see that that a lot of these forums are still out there and doing well. I think a lot of people are getting sick of the social platform of just scrolling by on Instagram and stuff where you can't make real comments or use it as a knowledge base. So once I get our stuff secured, I'm going to start some new threads. Sweet.
Yeah, that's a great point about forums being knowledge bases, because I do, when I'm, hot and heavy into this GTO, I use that as a reference quite a bit, because typically if what I'm trying to do, someone else or 10 other people have done already.
Totally.
And they have documented their processes, and it's all there for anyone else to see, which is a flipping miracle over the time before automotive forums, when you'd have to hopefully know a guy that may know what he's talking about, or may know another guy, and you have third-hand knowledge, and maybe it's right, maybe it's not.
Well, and what's even more aggravating is when, so for example, there's a, I'm not going to pick on any particular Facebook group, but you're in a group and a new person joins and they ask the most rudimentary question that has been answered 1 billion times on forums and on, other resources, but this person doesn't know or doesn't take the time to look, or they can't search it because it's a Facebook group that doesn't have that ability.
Right.
And what it ends up doing is perpetuating a bunch of garbage where people are jumping in that are also not qualified to answer the question. Like, I don't know, like maybe what's a pro touring car? And,
got me. You got me.
and you got to slog through all that to try and get to a decent answer. And I swear I've had people that are insistent on incorrect information, and it's a bummer. Where you don't really see that so much on the forums, because you've got that luxury to go, hey, does this fit this? And you look it up and they go, yes, it does. Here's a picture, and you're done.
Plus, you can also do there's a lot of these forums have good search engines as well to search within the forums. So
right, totally.
Or if somebody does ask a rudimentary question, somebody either may say use the search, or they'll link in the thread of where that information is, and then lock the thread down if it's an admin, and then be on their way. The show doesn't fill up with garbage.
Right.
So here's your answer. Have a nice day. Please use the search in the future.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately our attention span is getting shorter. And I used to really enjoy following threads along and seeing, waiting for that next update, the next picture, whatever. And, and becoming part of that community, and sometimes giving the person a hard time if there hasn't been an update in a while.
Right.
And of course, receiving a lot of that stuff too, when our updates were not that great or very dramatic, or they took too long or whatever. And on Facebook, it's like, or Instagram, or, any of the other places you can go, people want to just see the finished product and be done with it. Yeah.
I mean, I get, I agree. People's attention span is shorter, but you know what? Like you, I enjoy the journey from start to finish. Case in point, there was a thread that somebody had on the Performance Years forums who wanted a serpentine setup, but didn't want like a March serpentine system or anything like that. He wanted it to look factory. So this guy, I mean, over a period of months, researched pulleys, diameters, modifications that was going to be needed in order to create his own quote unquote factory serpentine setup on his GTO. And it looked amazing when he was done. I mean, it looked like it belonged there from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And now all that information is there for anybody who wants to do the same thing. This guy did all the legwork for you for the benefit of the rest of the people who may want to do that as well.
Yeah, and that's what it's for.
Yeah.
And it would be a bummer if that started off as a Facebook post.
Oh yeah.
And then 2 weeks from now he added a picture in the comments.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work. So
Yeah, exactly.
So that was really cool. And we're guilty too of having some unfinished forum threads even on our own site. Our forum, we have two of them, two different topics, I should say. One of which is cars that we've built at the V8 Speed and Resto. The other is individuals who built their own cars that are sharing them on the forum. And the whole goal there was to allow people to post their own stuff and not have it get intermingled with ours. For those
Sure.
that, we're just seeking our stuff out.
Mhm.
But when I noticed, traffic started to fall off and again, the rise of Facebook, I found, and of course, I just found myself not having quite as much time to author all these things. When you got, 25 cars in the shop, it's hard to write a story about each one of them.
That's tough.
But there are some that, I would like to do and like to get out there. So it was neat, kind of energized again about the forums.
Well, I certainly owe a few updates on my GTO, the Saga.
Yeah,
That
right.
is my
There you go.
GTO. I owe a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
updates on that forum as well.
Yeah, and I'm guilty too because my Riv's getting some work as we speak. So
Yeah,
brought
that's
brought
right.
it to our own shop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tyler was helping you out with that, right?
Yep. He's done a whole lot of stuff in a short period of time, and that's why it was there. So did almost a complete front end rebuild except for ball joints because they were fine.
Cool.
End links, upper lower control arm bushings. I had already put new shocks on it, so we just reused those. But the tie rod ends and all that stuff were in good shape. So, and then he went through an ordeal changing some rear axle bearings because the part number you buy is not correct for the car. And he had to measure and cross-reference and locate bearings and retaining collars and all that stuff. So that was fun. But
I bet.
Made it through all that. He put some rear shocks on it, changed the rear axle fluid out, put new brake shoes all the way around. It's still a drum brake car, and I have plans eventually to do some kind of disc upgrade and a Hydro Boost on it. But this thing just stops so well with the drums,
Does
the way
it?
I
Nice.
drive it. I'm not worried about it. But I had riveted shoes.
Uh-huh.
And I changed them. I had Tyler change them for bonded shoes.
Okay.
So that if these wear, they don't score the drums real bad.
Oh, I gotcha.
The rivet heads can do that.
Sure.
And he had to have the rear drums turned just a touch to clean them up to get the shoes to fit.
Uh-huh.
So that all happened. A front grease job, bearings. Today or yesterday and today, I guess he was doing I had a leaky intake manifold, so we put a new intake gasket set on it, and valve covers, and upper and lower radiator hoses. And,
Nice.
yeah, a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm happy about that.
A lot of great maintenance stuff. I love it. That thing's going to be like driving like a new car.
We'll see. Yeah. Did a little tire rotation. So it'll be something that I'll have to throw a few photos in the forum, especially that odyssey of the rear axle bearings, because that was a nightmare.
Is it? What about that? The side, the window seal.
That's kind of phase 3.
Okay.
Doing some mechanical stuff first. If he gets this other stuff wrapped up tomorrow or so, might have him do that too.
Nice.
The horn relay has failed, which had failed in every previous Riv I've ever had.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think he's trying to find the darn thing right now because it's way up under the dash. But the previous ones I've been able to repair. It's just the little power feed wire that goes to the coil that becomes the electromagnet inside the relay.
Yeah.
Somehow breaks. So if you're very careful, you can finally solder that thing back together, and it works fine.
Cool.
because it's not an off the shelf part, of course. So,
Of course it's not.
Yeah.
Why would it be? There's probably not a lot of off-the-shelf parts for that car. What I mean,
not a whole lot. No,
Yeah.
not a whole lot.
but that's part of the charm.
It is, and I'm glad he put new strut rod bushings up front, and those were worn out when I got the car, and because those bushings are not off the shelf, I did a trick where you can take some from a '69 Mustang and file them down and swap them
nice.
in, because the Mustang has a similar strut rod front end, but those weren't cut properly. I think I cut them to the dimension, their compressed dimension.
Oh, okay.
So once they got tightened on the car, they were all of a sudden too short already. So that ended up being a little bit of play in there, and you could
Nice.
notice it because your alignment would change. You know, if you hit the brakes, everything would
Oh boy.
adjust. So I'm just looking for improvements in those kind of areas of,
Sure.
little maintenance crap, so that get this thing back on the road and not have to worry about stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. So you're right. That'll be a good forum update. A couple pics of the Riv, and then we'll get some GTO updates. And
As soon as I'm allowed to leave the house,
Right.
we can
Now you got an
get some
excuse.
updates. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. I just made actually before we started this, I was typing up a quick list of remaining items that I need, and it's not that bad of a list right now.
that's good.
Oh yeah, so I'm close. I'm really, God, when I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm right there.
Yeah.
So-
Well, right there is better than nowhere. So
Right there is better than where I was a year ago.
this is true.
Man, it's come a long way. Long way.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I will look forward to that.
Me too.
And
man.
you've resisted the urge along the way to just throw an LS in it.
Yeah. There was no resistance because there was no urge.
We're supposed to get one of our LS cars back this week. Actually, that 66 Olds 442 we did a few years ago.
Right.
He's getting some maintenance done, and he's bringing that one back. He's put a lot of miles on the car and really, really digs it. And it'll be neat to see that car, because in my opinion, we did not do a proper send off. We didn't do a good video on that car.
Okay.
So we're gonna shoot one of those when it comes in.
How many would you say, like on a percentage basis, are cars getting LS swapped
Like in the world or in our shop?
in your shop, just from your experience?
A decent amount, but not all of them. I think people are under the impression that the LS swap is maybe more popular than it really is. It certainly has its motivation for doing it, but like I've got a bunch of Trans Ams and Pontiacs in the shop right now that are all staying Pontiac powered. A couple Olds 403 cars that are staying Olds 403.
Wow.
As a matter of
No
fact.
kidding. Huh.
Just getting some drivability stuff, fuel injection and whatnot. But at the same time, I've got an LSA 67 Camaro that we're just starting on right now. We've got an LT4, supercharged Camaro that's kind of in the home stretch. And then I've got the other flavors too. I mean, we've got 2 Coyote 5.0 Ford swaps in process right now, and we've got a 6.4 Hemi Mopar swap going on.
Nice.
And a 70 Barracuda that came in kind of bolted together but nowhere finished. So we're
Okay.
wiring and making that one work. And people ask all the time, why is the LS such a popular swap engine? And in fact, our friend Paul asked you that.
Yes, he did. Actually, I thought about this, and it goes back, I think, to when the small block Chevy came out in 1955. That design really lent itself to transplanting into other vehicles. Number one, it's a fairly compact design. It's a fairly lightweight design, good power in it. And on a lesser aspect, it's a good looking engine. The Chevy small block's a nice looking engine. It's very symmetrical. It looks good. And I think that's what lends itself to a lot of hot rodders, and it's easy, and there are literally millions of them out there, and the parts are cheap. They're easy to make a lot of power. They last a long time if they're built right. And I think a lot of those features cross over into the LS platform. It's a fairly compact engine. It's not a very good looking engine, but it makes power super easy. They're super cheap to buy. You could buy a junkyard 5.3 for, a couple $100 out of a truck and make a lot of good power with it. And that is just so attractive to people who want to make good power. Unlike a new Hemi, which is probably super expensive, a Coyote, ridiculously expensive to make fast. It's a huge engine too. It probably doesn't fit in a lot of things without a lot of modification. So for those reasons, I think the LS continues to be a super popular swap in a lot of older vehicles.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and you've touched on a few things there. One is that you got to warn people about the misconception of the LS and Gen 3 and Gen 4 small blocks being cheap, because in many ways they are. You can get a 5.3, like you're saying, for a few $100, but there's so much that goes along with the conversion that if somebody does a super bare bones budget swap, they're going to have problems. And it's funny, if you jump on YouTube and look up like budget LS swap, you see these people that the headline is, $2,000 LS swap. And then, or is it ? Because by the time they put the fuel system in the car and the fuel lines and the fittings,
there's that.
Well, you end up making these choices along the way. And I tell people all the time that call our shop, and I hear Joe, our customer relation guy, on the phone, every day, where people are like, these engines are cheap. I can get a turnkey solution for, a couple of $1,000. And where that might be true to a certain degree, the difference comes in. That's using the junkyard engine, first of all. So that means probably no warranty, unknown history.
Correct.
And if you're building a junkyard car, that's great. But when people call us, they want something a little bit nicer than something that looks like it just came out of a 150,000 mile pickup truck.
Right.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's a consideration, because in order, like you said, to make these things pretty, you got to take them apart and clean them. And if it's an aluminum block, all the accessory drives aluminum, the heads are aluminum, the intake is plastic. It takes a lot of cleaning and detail work to make one of these things look nice. And that's time, and time is money. And next thing you know, you've added to the budget. You can get the factory ECM out of the car and the factory harness, but it's only going to allow you to put the ECM kind of where GM wanted it. So
not
if you
where
want to
necessarily want it,
right, or make it look nice, and then so there's that question, and the next question becomes, well, the factory harness might be trying to communicate with the body module and the security system and the emissions controls, and do you need all that in your hot rod? So can we start to cut those things out of the harness? And here's one of those decisions, because yes, you certainly can, but why bother spending time on a 15 or 20-year-old junkyard takeout harness when you can get a new one that doesn't have any of that stuff?
That's designed for that retrofit.
Sure, and allows you the flexibility to put the ECM out of the way so you don't see it, so that the wires are clean when you open the hood. But this also adds, in some cases, more expense than the engine itself. So
well, yeah.
These are ways that the price climbs, but I think the returns are totally there. The LS platform, like you said, the improvements over the second generation small block, the list is a mile and a half long, and a lot of people don't really realize what changed on those engines outside of plastic and aluminum. But it was a clean sheet design. It's a 6-bolt main block, so it's got cross-bolted mains from the factory, so the bottom end is super strong. It was designed to be aluminum or cast iron, so you can get the aluminum block, and it's the same dimensions as the iron block. The oiling system is vastly improved. The piston and crank geometry has been improved. The cylinder heads are light years ahead of anything that was available on a Gen 3 or a Gen 2 small block. And then silly things like it's a gasketless design. The whole thing's O-rings.
That's right. That's right.
And you need sealer on a couple little spots, and that's it. And a lot of those gaskets are reusable. So it doesn't leak anywhere near as much as your traditional small block. And initially, people were kind of scared off because things like the main bolts, the main caps, were called torque to yield.
Right.
So they were single-use fasteners. But today you can get all that stuff new from ARP and load the whole thing with reusable fasteners, so you can tear them down and rebuild them. Again, the cylinder head design is super nice. The airflow is just unreal. The roller motors from the factory, they've got bosses machined and cast into the valley pan for knock sensors and a reluctor ring on the crank for the timing, and little advancements like it doesn't have a traditional distributor. It's got a coil on plug design. So when you think about that, you used to have one ignition coil firing for every cylinder, and now you've got one coil firing 1/8 of the time. So it has more time to recharge, giving a better spark, and then and it's going to last so much longer. And your plug wire is only a few inches long now, instead of something that went from the far left front head all the way around,
a couple feet long.
Yeah, and the short one being a foot long, so there was differences in timing, and the engine management system the factory one is brilliant, and especially if you can tune it and make it work in your application. Otherwise, you've got aftermarket options that you can throw on the thing and tune themselves.
Vast aftermarket support on those engines, unbelievable. I mean, it's a whole industry in and of itself. It's just LS support, for crying out loud.
Right, totally. And now we're seeing all these companies that make bolt-in kits to adapt them to different platforms with mounts and cross members and headers and accessory drives. And Holley keeps pushing the envelope with their accessory drive systems, which are pretty cool because they retain that OE kind of cast aluminum look, but they're getting smaller. In fact, their latest concept, I think, was stolen from one of the Corvettes, but it's a generic water pump now that bolts onto a housing, and the housing has the brackets built into it for the water pump or for the steering pump and the alternator.
Oh.
So
very cool.
They just consolidate all this stuff, and if the water pump goes bad, you take the middle part of the pump out and put another one in, and the rest of the pump housing stays on the engine.
Oh, brilliant! That's very cool.
It's pretty sharp.
Yeah.
So you have all that stuff, plus they're lightweight. They can easily make a ton of power, and like you said, they package well into just about anything. And there was some hiccups there too, because the oil pan and pickup was different. So they had to get around that. So companies, started making different pans and pickups, and then headers and manifolds were starting to come on the market. And today, the nice thing is, so I think the real secret of doing a dollar down LS type swap is by used aftermarket performance parts. So don't think you're going to the junkyard and taking a junkyard engine, because you can't use the pan, you can't use the manifolds. You're going to have to put new mounts in it. You don't really want that old wiring harness or whatnot. But if you hang out maybe on an automotive forum, like Chavels.com or even a Facebook marketplace kind of thing, and start accumulating pieces that people have been taking off to improve theirs, you'll find headers, you'll find ECMs, you'll find harnesses, you'll find all this stuff. And I think that's a better way to get in if you're going to truly try to piece something together for as little investment as possible.
I think that's part of the allure as well. If people who like to try to scrounge all these parts to build something on their own rather than buy a whole package of things, they can kind of, pick apart and find little things here and there that they want to say, I need these headers, so they find it like you said, like on a forums or a Facebook marketplace or a specific intake they want to try to find. And I think that's part of the fun it is, and that's real hot rodding, I think.
It is, yeah. And in that case, you can look at new stuff, new catalogs, and transpose, part numbers and whatnot. It's
Hmm.
still kind of buyer beware that the things are going to work, and
Right. Oh yeah.
and your individual finish level, is kind of up to you. Again, that's where a lot of the
Hmm.
time goes. But the question that Paul had about, of all the late model engines, why is this one such the swap monster? I think is a term that he
Yeah. That's what he
used.
said.
You hit some other great points. The Coyote V8, the 5.0s from Ford are wonderful engines. They are
Sure.
so strong. The bottom end will handle 1,500 horsepower in stock configuration. It's crazy, but they're very big.
They're
You know,
big.
like you said,
Yeah.
that cylinder head, it's a 4-valve head, which is great. It flows really insane amounts of air, but they're almost wider than they are longer.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's a real limiting factor in a lot of cases, especially if it's something that you want to put in, like an old a Model A or something, like a Model A hot rod. That I don't think that would ever fit or look good.
Yeah, it would end up looking like, an old Arden flathead,
Yeah.
with
Huge.
the Hemi overhead conversion is sticking out with no side covers on the engine,
Right.
just on the hood sides. So there's that. The aftermarket support is catching up
Hmm.
with the Ford stuff, but Ford doesn't do the aftermarket any favors with part numbers and part revisions. So they'll make part revisions, a couple times a year, and all of a sudden something physically doesn't bolt to the block anymore.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the front drive will change, or a cylinder head will change, and all of a sudden the part number is totally different, and the stuff doesn't fit anymore. So you have a lot of companies that are kind of waiting around to see if a particular Ford crate engine will stay consistent for 3 or 4 years
Oh
before
boy.
they'll invest making parts for it,
I
because
get
they
it.
don't want to spend all kinds of money developing an intake manifold or something, and it only fits in an engine made for 3 months.
Yeah, that would not be good.
And I've
That's
heard
a
this
bit of a
more than
bust.
once. Yeah. And we were kind of victims of that ourselves. We're working on a 57 Thunderbird right now that has a 5.0 and a 6L90 transmission, which is the 6-speed Ford,
Hmm.
and or 6L80, and the catalog, the Ford Racing catalog, is like, here's the part number, and get the whole kit. Well, nobody in the country had one, and it was because the kit changed,
Oh
and the
man.
production of that engine completely stopped because Ford was changing the Mustang, and nobody could get anything. So we ended up buying an engine, buying a transmission, and kind of building our own assembly from independent sources, even though the mission was to not have to put the time into doing that, because it's fun.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying, individuals building cars in their garage, hot rodders, they like the hunt. They like doing the research.
Hmm.
In our case, oftentimes we have a customer that says, look, I want to drive this car in 6 months.
Yeah.
Get me the stuff now. And we don't want to be spending that time.
Right.
We want an easy turnkey solution. And, a lot of times people give us a hard time about buying new engines because they're like, oh, yeah, sure, anybody can buy a crate motor and throw it in a car. Well, the advantage there, too, is that that's warranted, pal.
Yeah.
And especially through our shop, we're fortunate enough to be Ford and GM service centers. So that warranty doesn't start until the customer gets the car home. So
Yeah, that's
if
huge.
if the engine is purchased in January and we finish the car in June, that 2-year warranty doesn't start till June, which is a great benefit for the customer.
Sure.
You don't get that if you're piecing together, take
Right.
out parts and whatnot. So
And even if a part did have a warranty, by the time you put it in, that warranty could be expired.
yes, and we see that a lot. And so if an individual on the street buys a GM crate motor, their warranty starts as soon as that purchase is made.
Hmm.
So that's kind of a bummer, but it's good for us because we can offer that additional service. Another one, it's interesting along the similar lines, is our friends at Modern Driveline extend the warranty for a year if you buy through them or through one of their authorized installers
Oh, cool.
on Tremec transmissions. So
Right on.
Yeah, and that's nice. It's just because they realize these things are sitting unused for a good portion of the beginning of their
Right.
life,
Right.
so it doesn't hurt anything.
That's a nice. That's nice that they do that.
Yeah, yeah. I wish more companies would do that because there's nothing worse than taking a part out of a box that's brand new and it's not the right one or it's broken or something and it's out of warranty already before it even.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah. But the Chrysler side is also kind of a nightmare because of all of these companies, they're the hardest ones to work with on the ECM.
Is that right?
Yeah, and a lot of it was theft and emissions, regulatory stuff where I remember at one point, and it's probably more now, but a few years ago, we were trying to research tuning a factory ECM out of a Chrysler that we didn't have the software yet. And one of the software companies was saying they needed to acknowledge the VIN in the software in every place where it gets hidden so that they could tune the car. They had to check all the right boxes. And the VIN, they had already counted 17 different instances where the VIN is in the software for a particular car.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's a theft thing, because you certainly don't ever change the VIN, but there are times when you can buy an ECM and wipe it clean and assign a new operating system to it the same way you do a computer at home.
Sure.
But if the VIN is locked in all these other places, you can't change that. You can't wipe that out.
I see.
And a lot of stuff like that. So a lot of people kind of stayed away from them because they couldn't crack them. They couldn't get into them to communicate with them. And
okay.
Now that's not so much. There's a few sources you can go to get access. Our HP Tuner suite kind of works with just about everything. But when the updates come out and like the new model year comes out, we seem to have the Chevrolet tuning capability first and then the Ford stuff. And then you'll get an update saying, okay, now we can get into the Mopar things because they take a little bit longer to get to know, if you will.
Sure. Getting to know you. Very nice.
Yeah. But those are good engines too. I've driven many, many cars with, 6.2 and 6.4 and 5.7 Hemis.
Sure.
And they're in a lot of trucks, and and that was kind of the deal too that a lot of people overlook on the LS. That was going to be a truck motor from day one.
Really?
Yeah, they rolled it out in '97 in the Corvette,
right,
and then in '98 in the Camaro and Firebird. But that was designed to be a truck. I mean, look at how many trucks they sell.
Oh yeah, it's a good point. They sell a lot of trucks.
It's probably 1,000 to 1 trucks versus Corvettes.
Yeah, true.
So they needed something that was strong and reliable, but that could be high performance and sexy enough to be a Corvette engine, for the image.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, these were designed to be in trucks.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the clean sheet design a lot more palatable when you have the economy of scale when you're going to put it in 1 million vehicles, every year. So yeah, that makes the costs are well offset by the number of units sold. So
right.
That makes complete sense.
The name of the game there.
Yeah, man.
So there is that challenge. They are not pretty engines. Although there's some, Locar is now coming out with some cool stuff that does a retro style intake, and we talked about this on that 67 Corvette.
Yeah.
And that project hasn't started yet, partially because of our current virus situation we're going through. Customer can't get us the car yet, but looking forward to playing with those toys because that certainly is an image changer for that engine, and we'll make it look retro. You can clean them up, you can move the coils off them. There's different intakes and all kinds of different stuff. But it's definitely not as pretty as an old nailhead Buick or a Pontiac or first gen small block Chevy, like you're saying, or an early Ford V8 or whatever.
Or Flathead or something. Flatheads are beautiful, I think.
They're cool. And, those Y blocks are neat. The one we took out of that 57 Thunderbird is a beautiful engine.
Yeah, they are cool. Yeah.
LS, not so much.
Not so much. I mean, it's definitely a form follows function type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
They function well, but oof, they're not
The
much
way you
to look
fix
at.
that is
Yeah.
you bury them in turbos and superchargers.
That's
Then they look a lot better. That's what
Right
we
on.
like to do.
That's funny.
Right on. Yeah. So I hope that answers that question a little bit, because there's a lot of things to consider, and it's those are the main reasons, why that thing gets swapped and everything. I was just looking online today, a guy doing a Fox body Mustang swap with an LSA supercharged Cadillac motor.
Holy cow.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a bolt-in. The parts are there.
Yeah.
Buy the mounts and everything and drop it in. And it's going to be a bad machine.
It will.
730 horsepower with
Oof.
the pulley and the cam that he's got in it.
That's going to scoot.
Yeah, and the Ford guys are all up in arms because you can do a turbo on a Coyote and do 1,000 or 1,200 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a cost and fitment and all that stuff.
Yeah, man.
But that's hot rod.
That's hot rod.
That's it.
Good stuff.
Well, before the mutiny starts to get the answers to our riveting trivia questions, I do have one more interesting thing that I recently discovered.
Tell me.
And this kind of gets back to my theory before of society and technology are advancing, but sometimes they seem to go backwards. And the one thing that I noticed is that I have an Amazon Alexa speaker. Do you have one of those?
Yeah, I do.
All right. And I know, people are saying it's listening to everything you're saying, and it's, reporting to the government. And
Every day.
yeah, and it could be, and I don't really care, because it's in our bathroom or it's in our bedroom, and we basically use this thing for weather and a little music in the wake up time, and then Kelly and I don't spend deep conversation time revealing secrets in that room. We're
Okay.
on our way to the office where we're having, stuff that we don't want the government to hear.
Right.
But I digress. But the one thing that speaker does not do is a clock radio function.
Mm.
And you would think that would be like most basic functionality. I want to listen because I can tune into different radio stations with it, but I can't say turn on WXRT in Chicago at 8 a.m. It won't do it.
Really?
Yeah, you can try it. It won't do it.
All right. I'll try it.
You can have it do certain things at 8 a.m. You can have it like read the news or, do other stuff. But your basic clock radio function doesn't exist.
Well, that's a shame.
Yeah. It might do it for its own Amazon music products. Like it might play an Amazon playlist.
I see.
But it won't do a radio station. But what I found, quite by accident, as I was kind of digging around throughout the universe on Google, looking to where our own V8 radio show podcast is carried, the iHeart Radio app, which is iHeart's really coming on strong for podcasts. They carry our podcast, and they have a wake up timer function with podcasts.
How about that?
So people can wake up to cue ball.
Right on. Because everybody wants to do that.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought that was pretty cool. So if, wherever you're listening to your favorite car show here on the podcast, you might want to check out the iHeartRadio deal because it adds some functionality beyond just being a player. And one of them is, and they also have a whole bunch of great radio stations that I think you can also become a clock radio for radio stations around the world. But that was pretty neat.
All right. Cue ball in the morning. That's my new morning zoo show.
That's it. Yeah, cue ball and dumbass. Welcome. Except when it comes to half the trivia questions.
You're right, silly. Then I'm the dumbass.
Yeah, well. Speaking of trivia questions.
Yes, sir. All right. Let's let the cat out of the bag here.
Right. We've got cats and bags.
Right. All right. I asked you, Kevin, who is credited for starting the pro touring movement or genre? And you went on a nice talk about the whole pro touring history of it and what is and what isn't. And you eventually boil it down to Mark Stilo being the person who came up with the pro touring term or the genre, as it were. And Kevin, that's exactly what I was going for, Mr. Mark Stilo.
Hey, right on.
And he came up with it when he built his '69 Camaro called Tri-Tip for the One Lap of America in 1993, and that's when it all started.
That's it. Our good friend Mark Stilo.
Yeah, and I was just actually listening to an interview with Kyle Tucker from Detroit Speed talking about that as well recently. So that kind of what brought that into my head.
Oh, right on.
So yeah, cool.
Did he happen to mention Jeff Smith and the logo sticker?
He did not mention Jeff Smith with the
one.
logo sticker.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so.
Okay, Yardley, you're going to have to update the Osty column with one name.
+1.
Ching.
We need running totals sent to us weekly.
Right. Okay, so your question was what and when, for a two-parter, was the first production supercharged car?
Yardley, you're going to have to put a -2 in the cue ball column.
So your logic was sound. You said that people got exposed to superchargers in World War II and all that stuff. And they learned to make power with them, and then OEs. But before that, you went backwards to the year of 1930 and threw out the Duesenberg brand, which I think makes sense. Duesenbergs are big cars. They were prestigious. They had to generate power and even just to move around.
A lot of technology in them.
Totally.
Yeah.
But unfortunately,
however,
not exactly the first one. So the world's first series-produced cars with superchargers were from our friends at Mercedes-Benz.
Ooh.
A couple of models. One was a 40 horsepower and one was a 65 horsepower, introduced in 1921.
Oh, my goodness.
And they used Roots-type superchargers.
Did they?
And if you know the evolution of the Roots-type supercharger, do you know that story?
I don't think I know the evolution.
Tune in next time for our trivia question.
Actually, we did have a trivia question regarding the naming convention, like a 671 or an 871 Roots type blower.
I think we talked about it then. So those blowers were invented by a guy named Roots, and they were designed to move air. So they used them to ventilate mine shafts and just push air. And the guys at Mercedes-Benz took one of those and started putting them on cars and selling them. I think Daimler had a patent for a supercharger still in the 1800s, in the 1890s, but they weren't mass-produced or produced anyway until 1921. And, of course, they called them compressors with a K, and they still do today.
Yes, they do. My old VW Corrado had a supercharger on it. It was a scroll type charger, not a Roots type charger.
Yeah,
but it was a nice unit.
They are. So unfortunately,
-2 for the Q.
That's all right though. It was a good story about the Duesenberg.
Thank you.
We don't talk enough about Duesenbergs on this show. I'm pretty sure.
Perhaps we should.
Well, now Trevor will bring something up because
please, Trevor. If I don't hear some Duesenberg trivia,
that's his jam.
By the next episode we record, I'll feel like someone has failed us.
He's also a big supercharger guy and an early supercharger guy too.
Cool.
Because his dad had some Graham supercharged cars.
Is that right?
From the 30s that Trevor helped rebuild when he was a kid. So
holy cow.
Maybe we just need to have him on as a guest.
We can do that.
Yes. Well, maybe we will. A little precursor. Trevor, you heard it here first.
Get ready, Trevor.
That's it. All right. Well, this was cool. This was, I think our adjective should have been tangential on this one because we just kind of went everywhere. But
next time on V8 Radio.
What was the word?
Oh my gosh, where is it?
Alacritus. Yes, Lacritus.
Alacritus, yeah.
I had an Alacritous time, and I hope you did too.
I did every time.
Right on. And we always like to, ask people to share the show and tell their friends about it. If you pick up a mobile device and go to v8radio.com, you'll see our latest episode and some icons. You just push the icon of where you want to listen. So we made it easier. So if you want to listen on iTunes, just push the iTunes logo and it'll go right to us.
Cool.
Same with the Google things and Spotify and TuneIn Radio and Stitcher,
iHeartRadio,
and definitely iHeart. Yeah, Player FM, Podbean, Podchaser, all those fun places. So we hope to see you there. We appreciate everybody for tuning in all around the world. We're getting a lot of great feedback. We encourage all that. You can leave us notes on our Facebook page, there's commentary that you can leave and reviews and things on some of the other sites. We always try to check those out too, so we appreciate that. You got anything else? Any last second tangents?
I feel normal losing the question again. I just feel right.
You feel back to your
just
old
feel
self?
right. Yeah, I feel back to my old self. 3 in a row. I couldn't handle that kind of pressure.
Well, now you know what it's like. It's lonely at the top.
It is, man.
They're always coming for you. You got to drop one every once in a while just to keep them at bay.
Keep it real, man. Got to keep it real.
That's it. All right, well, for our 3 in a row, Mr. Mike Q-Ball Clark, I'm Kevin Ostie. This is V8 Radio asking you to make sure you keep it under 100, keep the shiny side up, and we will see you next time on V8 Radio.